Okay, so here's a controversial statement I'm going to put to you, and I'm not going to say whether I agree with this or not, but a statement. The Ukrainian military today is not a good military.
In which sense?
It's not. It is not a competent, professional Western-style military. They are innovative. They are determined, and I think that's the most important thing: is they are determined. But if you look at the way they're fighting compared to, let's say, how an American armored division would fight or an American armored corps would fight, I have a feeling that if the U.S., let's say, let's send an armored corps into Ukraine, and we'll send we'll send 3 corps, heavy armored corps, 3rd corps. So you got an armored division, you got 2 armored divisions. Technically, it comes 1st Cav, which should be reflagged as 2nd armored. I'm sorry, if it's not different from an armored division, it's an armored division. And let's find a 3rd division. Let's take, I don't know, 3rd ID, because they got some heavy units. And we sent them in. We could probably clear out the Russians from eastern Ukraine in 2.5 weeks flat, 2 weeks flat. The Ukrainians can't do that. And that's not a diss in them, because considering where they were 8 years ago, they have become good enough to beat the Russians. And the Russians are setting a really, really bad standard. They also have the benefit that they know how the Russians think. There is that as well.
It's something we completely lack in the West.
But I kind of view us, and please do not take this as condescending as it is about to sound. Especially if you're Ukrainian. During the American Civil War, the European powers weren't all that interested, because they viewed it as basically a bunch of amateurs fighting a bunch of incompetents.
Really? Was it that?
They sent observers to have a look, but they didn't think anything interesting was going to come of it. It was just kind of whatever. It's a war that's happening over there. There's those colonial guys. And the Ukraine system is, these guys have worked very hard. They have improved dramatically from where they were. But going from poor to competent is much, much easier than going from competent to excellent.
I mean, for me, the comparison between the US Army and Ukraine is very, doesn't make any sense to a certain degree, because, I mean, you guys have a professional army since, I don't know when, and you spend so much money into everything. That's a completely different way. Then Ukraine is also...
Let's not take you out. Would you put a Ukrainian division up against a British division? Who do you think would win?
But the British also have and they have different equipment and professional army.
Exactly. And that's exactly where we're going. So the standard isn't that Ukraine isn't good per se. It's not good enough. But they are not to the standards of a modern Western NATO. So when you get the Russian propagandist going, we're going up against NATO. No, they're going up against Ukrainians.
I get the point. But actually, I find quite annoying when several times when they claim now that the Ukrainians are fighting with Western tactics and this is why they are winning. And I would actually state here what I think is that, of course, they were trained by the United States since 2014 and everything else. But I assume that the Ukrainian tactics, from what they have currently available, are above that what a Western force could do with the same amount, because they have direct experience. They have the old Soviet training. They have the training what they received basically through fighting in Donbass since 2014, fighting directly the Russians, and also with Western training as well. And I assume, since it's in their best interest and necessity, and it seems a very innovative force and very fast learning force, because they also have a lot of professionals in there from the civil part, that they are way faster learning and doing everything faster than most, because there's less there's also you have a far less bureaucracy and all the stuff. I mean,
there is that as well.
It forces you to, because this is a fight for survival. It's a fight for personal survival and the survival of the state. So everything gets way more focused, because some people complained, like, everyone talks about the corruption in Russia, and Ukraine before the war was also criticized for corruption. But the thing is, corruption, I think, in Ukraine goes way down now because they can't afford it anymore. You can sometimes afford corruption, and Russia still can afford corruption because so far they are not getting invaded or something.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, what do somebody cares in Moscow, basically, for what's happening in Ukraine for some people of there. There's no incentive. For Ukraine, it's very important because their friends, their families are getting killed, or they have to go to Germany or something else, or on the front. I mean, there's also I remember, I think before the war, there were some commercials, army commercials for Ukraine. And they were like, there was no need to explain why to fight. There was like the guy, I'm a software developer, but every 3 months or something, I need to go to Donbass and something along those lines. So this is a completely a different world. So from that sense, I would say Ukraine, from what they have, are probably the most effective and efficient right now, because they have an agglomeration of many aspects and direct field experience. But of course,
I agree.
But if you put them up against the Western division, it's probably very different, but also I guess they might have a few aces in their sleeve.
Yes,
probably
absolutely.
If they immediately go against the Western division, they probably will get a bloody nose, because they're now so experienced fighting the Russians, similar like the Germans were German generals in 1944 going from the Eastern Front to the Western Front and being completely shocked because it was such a different way of fighting.
Yeah. So this is something that's going to come out after the war, years after the war. I'm wondering if the difference in the training that they've gotten in the US over the last few years hasn't necessarily been in the tactics, but more the culture of the army, I think. A more willing discussion, more open between subordinate and superior, to listen, to be more trusting of subordinates, perhaps.
And introducing NCOs probably.
And the NCO Corps, of course, is the other big thing. So that's a different thing to how well you fight tactically as a platoon on the ground. I mean, in fairness, I'm sure a good Ukrainian platoon is as good as a good American platoon. But that's always been historically, the Americans have been better at larger unit operations than they have at a smaller scale.
And you get all the material.
And all the material
all the stuff you need. It's like,
But no, it's going to be, it's a very, very interesting, again, all we're getting is the TikTok stuff. We're not getting the for good reason, the full details. So historians that come after us, if I'm not going to be 80 years old and digging into this myself with your amount of hair. I mean, it may be grey, but I still have it.
I have just relocated it.
Okay, I'll take that. To see just what they got right. But yeah, you're absolutely correct that they've learned a lot of good lessons. They are adapting and have adapted very quickly. But yeah, again, you were correct that it happens in all wars.